This is a bit different video. I'm still Sini, but I'm trying to speak English.
Thank you.
And this video is in English because I have a very special visitor, originally from South Africa, Xan van Rooyen, and you live in Finland nowadays.
Yeah, I'm originally from South Africa, but I moved to Finland to do an exchange because I was obsessed with Finnish heavy metal and I just had to come to this amazing country. And then I lived in Australia for half a year after my bachelor's degree, and then I moved to Finland to do my master's up in Jyväskylä. And then moved to Helsinki, moved to Sweden for half a year, and now we're back in Helsinki, and it will be almost 15 years that I'm living here now.
Okay, that's a long time.
We love it here, so.
We speak mostly about this My Name is Magic book today, but you have written also other books.
Yeah, I've mostly written young adult books in the fantasy and science fiction genres. You can find most of my books in the Helsinki library.
This one is from Helsinki Library, so yes.
And my most recent book that came out last November is actually an adult book, and that's called Silver Helix, and that's my adult debut. I have one new adult book that I wrote many years ago, but yeah, mostly I'm writing young adult fiction.
My Name is Magic is more middle grade and lower YA.
Yeah, it started out actually as a middle grade book, but the content and the type of story I wanted to tell was just a little bit too dark for middle grade. So, you know, at the request of my agent and after discussion with editors, decided to age it up into young adult. But we wanted to keep it in this younger YA bracket.
Yeah.
There's so much young adult literature that's written for upper YA, like 16, 17 plus. There isn't so much written for this age group where you kind of transition from your middle grade books to the young adult books. And so I really wanted to write a book for the kid that I once was, and write the type of story that I was looking for when I was that age. And so that's why My Name is Magic is for like this, I would say like 13 to 15 age group.
Yeah. It's very important to have also books about non-binary characters and minorities in this age group, because I think in Finnish we have mostly books about them in upper YA and less in middle grade and for young audiences.
Exactly, yeah, there's definitely something missing, I think, in this like transition bracket, and hopefully more people will be writing on the slightly younger side of YA.
Yeah, because younger people are already thinking about these things and trying to find themselves. It's not very nice that they have to just read books that are way too much for them.
Yeah, and I think also, like, you know, when puberty hits, it can be the start of a lot of gender dysphoria for some people, and trying to figure out who you are while going through all of that sort of hormonal physical turbulence is really difficult. I know from my personal experience that was. And so, yeah, this book kind of sits right there. You know, if a 10-year-old is starting to have questions about who they are and maybe starting to feel a certain way about their changing body, then hopefully this book can kind of help, or at least show them that what they're feeling is okay.
That's very important. Book sets in Finland, and there is a Finnish magical school and Finnish mythology. And because I love Finnish mythology, and very many Finns just don't care about the subject.
So sad.
I'm very interested, how did you find the idea to write about Finnish mythology?
Well, it stems from childhood. I'm autistic, and one of my very first special interests was mythology, and I was immediately drawn to Celtic and Norse mythology, and I only really discovered Finnish mythology a little bit later. And I had this like a mythology picture book that had one story from Finnish mythology in it that fascinated me. So then, by way of Finnish heavy metal and bands like Children of Bodom and Nightwish and Moonsorrow, I started getting more exposed to elements of Finnish mythology, and I was just instantly fascinated. But of course, the first thing I think most, particularly English speakers, encounter when you delve into Finnish mythology is the Kalevala. And it's lovely, it's wonderful, it's a really sort of rich story, but I wanted to dig deeper. And as soon as I started doing more research, I understood that there were these more authentic, more original folk stories that had kind of been rewritten to become what is now the Kalevala. And so I started doing more research, and I read this Risto Pulkkinen Suomalainen kansanusko book.
Yeah, I have also read that one for my books because I have also written my own books about Finnish mythology.
Yeah, and it's a fantastic resource. I know that it's not perfect and there have been some criticisms about it, but I tried to do as much research as possible, reading that book, reading some supplementary books, this Magic Songs of the Finns. And I also found various websites that deliberately try to go back to the original folk stories as taken from like Eastern Finland, and even some overlap sometimes with the Sami people.
Yeah.
Although I try to be extremely respectful that I don't ever touch the Sami mythology, because I don't feel that that's for me to write about. I mention it, so I definitely acknowledge it, but I don't try to incorporate it into my stories. This is my adopted culture, just Finnish mythology, and so I try to approach it with as much respect as I can and reverence, knowing that it isn't innately mine, but I love it, and I hope that my love for and my passion for Finland and Finnish mythology comes through. And there's also this artist, Tero Portan, who does incredibly dark but beautiful artworks, and he tells the story mostly of underworld mythology through his art.
I have to check that because I'm very interested how to make visual pictures about Tuonela, because it was so difficult to understand when I was reading about it for my latest trilogy.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it is. It's definitely complex mythology, I would say, and maybe that's because it hasn't had as much of a written history. Like it doesn't have like the Edda or the sagas Norse mythology does, or the tomes that the Druids kept for Celtic mythology. Yeah. But that's why I was inspired to write about Finnish mythology.
And what is your favorite creature or creatures from Finnish mythology?
I love all the underworld characters because I just naturally like dark things and spookier things. But my favorite character is a lesser known creature called the Rahko. And not much is known or written about this creature. They are the moon darkeners that apparently are responsible for things like the eclipse, and they like paint over the moon. And I found that fascinating and inspired a little bit by what Johanna Sinisalo said when she wrote her troll story, that she uses the mythology as a starting point, kind of like as a springboard, and then makes her own story around it. I think I sort of like cleave toward the Rahko because it's lesser known, and I can kind of make up what I want it to be or what I need it to be for a story. And they don't feature in My Name is Magic, but they do feature in Silver Helix, particularly in the sequel.
That's very interesting because I don't think I have read any fiction book about them yet. So they are very unknown even in Finland.
Okay. Well, that's great then, and I have like complete poetic license.
Let's go back to My Name is Magic. The main character Taika is non-binary, but that is not the thing that sets them apart, because that is what only one characteristic, and the thing that really separates Taika from others is that their name is Magic, but they don't seem to have any magic.
Yes, which is a pet peeve of Taika's throughout the book and feels like a cruel joke by their parents.
I want to know if you have any pet peeves about how to write non-binary characters.
In any kind of representation, I think authenticity is the most important part, and no identity, whether it's a gender identity or an ethnic identity or a neurological identity, is going to be a monolith. And one non-binary writer will write their character in one way and a different non-binary writer will present that character in a completely different way. So as long as the character feels authentic and real. And I've written different non-binary characters who present in quite different ways. Taika uses they, them pronouns because I use they, them pronouns. That was real to kind of my lived experience. But in my book Silver Helix, Omen is the main character and she is also non-binary, but she uses she, her pronouns because that is a real lived experience of one of my other non-binary friends. So I think being able to show this kind of diversity within an identity is really important. And one thing that really bugs me about non-binary characters is when they're presented as strictly androgynous. Like, androgyny is often associated with being non-binary, but I also know very many non-binary people who present in more typical gendered ways, who might present more typically feminine or masculine, whether that aligns with their assigned sex at birth or not. And so having this concept of, oh, you're not non-binary unless you're androgynous, unless you look androgynous, can be very damaging and potentially harmful to non-binary people. And I particularly hate when there is a gender fluid or non-binary character who maybe shifts between pronouns and that is indicated by what they're wearing. So the day they wear a dress, they are she, her, and the day that they wear pants, they're he, him, because it perpetuates this idea that the clothing defines your gender identity, and it's like, no, I can put a dress on and I'm still non-binary. I can wear a tuxedo and I'm still non-binary. So that is a pet peeve of mine.
That's very good to know because I have read some books that happens.
I mean, it might be true for some people that if they are presenting more femme on a certain day, then they want to have she, her pronouns. But I think writing a character like that in an uncritical way, where perhaps that is not addressed or not made very clear to the reader that regardless of what they're wearing and what the pronouns might be on any given day, doesn't change the gender identity. They're not going from girl to boy. They're always non-binary or always gender fluid. I think that's important, particularly for people from outside of the LGBT plus community who might just read that and be like, oh, so if someone's wearing a dress, they're a she, her. That's really damaging, I think.
Also, you have magic school in this My Name is Magic, and the students are divided to houses by the magic elements that are nature elements.
Yes.
How did you come up with that?
This comes from my own schooling system. In South Africa, the schools are quite traditional, whether it's a government school or a private school. And I went to a private school, and most of the private schools are religion aligned. So I went to a Catholic private school. And so we had these houses where kids, when you joined the school, kind of randomly assigned. And you had a color, and you had the matching t-shirt. And we did these sort of like war cries or chants when we had inter-house swimming or inter-house debating.
Oh, that's very fascinating. What was your house?
My house was blue, and it was called Murichi because our houses were named for the connection we had with the Ursuline Order of Nuns, which they found
very, very confusing.
Yeah, they founded our school. We were an Ursuline convent that then became a school, and so we had these like weird connections with places in Italy. Even our school was named after a place in Italy.
That's just I don't know what to say.
Yeah, so the house system comes very much from my own upbringing, and then this idea of splitting people by elements comes more from my pagan roots and my pagan understanding, where you have, the four elements of nature.
Yeah.
But it's an imperfect system, and even the characters in the book kind of call out this system because it is putting people into a category that might not really fit super well, and there are students who have magic that isn't actually elementally aligned, but because of maybe the way they conjure their magic or perform their magic, they're just kind of like put into the best fit house, even if it feels very artificial. And in this way, for me, the house system is also a little bit of like an allegory about how we label people and how we feel the need to sometimes impose labels on people.
And taika is not in any
Yeah, exactly.
house. That's a very symbolic thing, and very much aligns with things the book says about gender and things.
Exactly, like this concept of being put into a box.
Yeah. And I think you have good understanding about how Finnish mythology and Finnish magic just goes together with nature and the nature elements, and I can feel it with this book.
Oh, thank you. That's something that's really important to me. It was something so different actually coming to Finland from my South African background, where nature in South Africa, and particularly when I lived in Australia, is usually dangerous and a lot of potential for the nature to kill you. And I remember, walking through forests in South Africa, constantly looking up, being aware of mambas, the snakes, dropping out of the trees.
I think I'm never going to go to Australia.
Yeah, I mean, I grew up in a house where there were like scorpions in the bathtub that crawled out the drains and centipedes under my pillow. So coming to Finland, it was so refreshing because nature was the balm. It was the safe place. It wasn't scary. Even a dark forest, it was like a place of solace.
There are no snakes that are just dropping into your head.
Yeah, thankfully. So it was very important for me to try to capture that, and I also really love how many Finnish names align with nature, and I really believe in the power of names. There's so many cultures, indigenous cultures, where names have power, and all the names that I give all of my characters, not just in My Name is Magic, kind of hold these little Easter eggs, information about who the characters are if you dig into the meanings behind the names.
That's cool, because I think names in fiction are very important, and I like that taika. They name in magic, but there are also other characters where name is significant, and I think it's very nice that there are Finnish names that mean something in this book. What are you writing next?
So I've been working on the sequel to Silver Helix, and I've just got an editorial letter back on that. So first draft is done, but now I need to jump back in and do the revisions, which is actually my favorite part of the process. So I can't wait to do that. And hopefully that sequel will be coming out probably at the beginning of next year. I think it might be too soon to have it published this year, but early next year. I'm working on a bunch of short stories, and I'm also part of the Sauti Collective, which is an African writers collective, and we've created this incredible Afrocentric science fantasy universe.
Oh, that sounds very cool.
Yes, I mean, so different. And that first anthology just came out to some critical acclaim. Like, people seem to be really liking it. We've done something pretty new and different with that. But now we're working on a second anthology, and I'm writing more stories set in that world. So yeah, my focus this year at the moment at least is going to be on the Silver Helix sequel and on more Sauti stories.
Oh, that's a lot.
It is actually. Yeah, over and above the day job as well.
Yeah, I can feel you. Thank you that you could come here and chat.
It's an absolute pleasure. Thank you so much for having me and for speaking in English. I appreciate it, because my Finnish would not be up for this discussion.
Bye bye.
Bye bye.